Thyroid disorders can range from a small, harmless goiter that needs no treatment to a life threatening cancer. Although the effects can be unpleasant and uncomfortable, most thyroid problems can be managed if properly treated. It's a pleasure to have Dr. Lakshmi Velmurugan, President of AHA, Associate Editor of Indian Journal of Practical Pediatrics. She has more than 45 publications in Indian and international journal to her credit. She's been an enthusiastic teacher and always emphasized the importance of clinical rounds, a simple but a strong, sturdy leader who inspires her students to dream more. A very happy moment in welcoming our own chief, Dr. Lakshmi Velmurugan. Welcome, ma'am.
I profusely thank Dr. Srinivasan for having given me this opportunity. He has taken a lot of risk by arranging for this program, and hope we all of us make it worthy for you. And I have one request to him also. As a state nodal officer, sir is capable of getting so many things done. I request him to make neonatal screening tests mandatory for all children of Tamil Nadu. That's a use, and a lot of children will be benefited by it, sir. Thanks for your organizational and congratulations for the excellent skills. We'll move on to the topic. Now, what is this? Repeatedly, I have been asked to do the same topic in intensive training. Next time, probably I will change the topic. And coming to thyroid disorders, what is the scope of lecture for you now? As exam-going postgraduates, it can be a short notes. Congenital hypothyroidism, neonatal screening tests, juvenile autoimmune thyroiditis, all are short notes for you. You can have a spotter or a short case on congenital hypothyroidism. But once you finish your examination, what all I am going to tell are going to be of great practical importance to you, because though we are not doing neonatal screening tests as a routine in government institutions, even after 20 years, even after 70 years, after which they have been instituted in all, after they have started, every corporate hospital, everywhere outside, we have started doing. You will be called to interpret most of these tests, and 80% of pediatric endocrinological problems are thyroid disorders, which we can manage on our own without referring to a endocrinologist. So it's really, I can say, like immunization and nutrition, thyroid disorders are bread and butter of any pediatrician. Follow and travel along with me for the next 80 slides, but I will finish it on time. Maybe a little fast, I cannot be as like my previous speaker, but I will please follow the topic, okay? Now coming on, see, this is what I have requested Srinivasan sir. It was started in early 1960s in US and UK, but still we have not done. So I want you to make it mandatory. Neonatal screening test should be made mandatory. Next is, why should we screen these children for congenital hypothyroidism? Because there are very little clinical features in the initial few weeks, and usually you end up with irreversible neurocognitive damage if diagnosis and treatment is delayed, and usually you have a cheap and very effective treatment in the form of thyroxine, which is less than 1 rupee. The tablet costs less than 1 rupee. So what do you mean by thyroid screening? Remember, it is done only on normal babies. Immediately after delivery, aim to pick up primary hypothyroidism. You cannot pick up secondary hypothyroidism by doing a TSH alone. By doing a heel prick on day 3, and again here, I would like to tell you that heel prick done on day 3, caught TSH and direct venous TSH, they are not synonymous. They are entirely different. The principles are different, the values are different, the cutoffs are different, okay? So be very careful with these three terminologies. There are advantages and disadvantages of caught and heel prick TSH. The biggest advantage of caught TSH is very easy to do it. The compliance for the patient is very good. But the disadvantage is you cannot screen for other disorders, and perinatal factors like asphyxia affect them to a great extent. And again, most important thing about caught TSH is you don't have established cutoffs. For example, this value, more than this value is hypothyroidism. You don't have cutoffs for caught TSH. So we sort of have moved on to heel prick TSH, in which you can screen other disorders like IEMs, inborn errors of metabolism, can be screened too. We do have established cutoffs. But unfortunately, the values, you get the reports after 2 or 3 days. So sometimes the recall of the patient may be needed, and patient may be unnecessarily sitting in the hospital for no reason to get this report. So these are the two disadvantages of your heel prick TSH. But whatever said and done, kindly do neonatal screening test wherever you are. When ISPE is Indian Society of Pediatric and Adolescent Technology 2018 has given clear-cut instructions. When are you going to test the child? On day 3 of the postnatal period. How to test the child? Either by a cord or a heel prick test. What is the test which you are going to do? It is going to be a TSH. And when do you call it a screen positive? This number, please remember, any TSH value more than or equal to 20 is called as a screen positive. So, what are you going to do with that value? We'll start with a case. This is a term 3.5 kg birth weight child with no risk factors at all. It's a well baby. You have done a routine screening. If you are not going to do in your practice, obstetricians are going to do. So beware and start doing it. You have done a routine TSH screening on day 3 and the TSH value is 66. Where is Prem? Is not there. Okay, Prem, TSH is 66. Is it positive? Screen is positive? Yes, it is positive because the screen, I am just asking you to keep you alert. Don't get worried, even if you know if you don't know the answer, just get up and sit down so that you will become alert. TSH is 66. So any TSH more than 20 we said is screen positive, and as Prem rightly pointed out, it is more than 20. So screen is positive. What are you going to do with this value of TSH 66? Are you going to treat immediately or are you going to ask for a venous test? For that also you have got a clear protocol. Any screen which is more than 20 is positive. If it is more than 80, you take an immediate venous sample and you also start therapy immediately. You need not wait for the report of the venous sample. If the screen is more than 40, you take a venous test immediately, but you will have to wait for the venous report. Next, if the screen is between 20 and 40, you can delay the venous test by 10 days so that you will get an appropriate value at the end of 10 days and then decide on what to do, right? This is very clear. Again, these are all standard protocols by ISPE. There is nothing like my protocol or your protocol, standard protocols, okay. And once you get the venous value, you are always going to rely on the venous value. And these three numbers, if the venous TSH is more than 20 in a child who is less than 2 weeks, or a venous TSH which is more than 10 in a child who is more than 2 weeks, or a free thyroxine less than 1.1, treat the child immediately. All the rest of the values you can follow up, right? Please take a copy of this slide, it's very, very important. And again, we come to another situation. The attending pediatrician also has not done a TSH, and obstetrician also has not done. Child comes to you for probably a transient stool or some diarrhea on the 10th day. Do you recommend a screening test? What do you mean by screening? You want to do just a TSH on that child? No. When it's already 10 days, you can directly go for a venous sample and then interpret the value as we have done previously, right? Okay. Now, this is more than 20 is screen positive. I told you what to do. Now, a newborn with a TSH screening between 6 and 20, what are you going to do? Should it be followed up or reassured or sent away? Values between 6 and 20 in a well baby, no risk baby, you can just follow it up. There's nothing you need to do at that point of time. You need not go for a venous TSH. Again, another value you need not go, right? So I've completed this tabular column for you. Now we'll go for a preterm child. Preterm children are a little tricky because this is a 1.5 kg preterm, 32 weeks gestational, and there is a history of thyroid disorder in the mother, but otherwise it's a well baby. Screening, routine TSH screening is 26. Is it screen positive or negative? The value is more than 20, so it is a screen positive baby. You can follow the same protocol, but there are two problems in preterm babies. We have two peculiarities. That is, preterm babies, even otherwise, they can have low T4, they can have low T3, they can also have low TSH. We call this transient hypothyroxemia of prematurity. It looks like central hypothyroidism where all the values are low, but still it is only transient, there is no therapy needed. And in the same way, they can have a normal T3, normal T4, mildly elevated TSH. It looks like subclinical hypothyroidism. In this condition is called what we call as transient hyperthyrotropinemia of the newborn. Here again retesting is a must. For both these children, though the screen is more than 26, they can be false positive screen. So, but still, what are we going to do with these children? It looks like hypothyroidism, but there is no hypothyroidism. What are we going to do? The same tabular column we follow. More than 20, we follow the ISPE guidelines as for term babies. Two changes. There are just two changes. If the screen is less than 20 in a child, in a term baby, what did we do? We just followed up the child. 6 to 20, I showed you one slide. We just followed up the child. Whereas in a preterm, if the value is less than 20 also, we do a retest again. You do a venous TSH again, right? And one more change is, when you have in the term baby, what did we tell? Any persistent TSH more than 10 beyond 2 weeks. We said it is hypothyroidism. Here, TSH beyond 3 weeks. We are giving that 1 more week allowance for a preterm baby to treat. Okay. The rest of the things are the same for a preterm baby. I am spending so much time on this because it is mandatory for all of you to know this. It makes a lot of difference in a child's life. So you should know it. Then and this is a common, PGs commonly ask us this question. A neonate, whatever, how many times I have told now you, the screen positive is more than 20. A neonatal screen value is 5.6. What does it mean? Automatically, according to you, it is screen negative only. That is less than, it is not more than 20, so screen negative. But in the bracket, the report of TSH, it is written 0.7 to 4.6. 4.6 வரைக்கும் normal. இப்போ 5.6 abnormal ஆன் மதரே உங்கள்கிட்ட கேட்பாங்க. She herself will come and ask you, is 5.6 abnormal? My child is having any problem? She will come and ask. No, it is mother is anxious, she will ask. But for you, you know screen positive is more than 20, so you are going to reassure and follow up the child. Okay, in sometimes another question you might face, a child would have received a blood transfusion or an exchange transfusion within the first 48 to 72 hours for neonatal hyperbilirubinemia. So what value should you take, because the child has received blood from the adult blood child has received? What are you going to do? For that also we have a cutoff. There we take, if the child who has received a blood transfusion, there we take the cutoff as more than 34. So long I was saying cutoff is more than 20. A child who has received a transfusion, the cutoff is more than 34. Now in a sick preterm, how long can we wait for screening? You can wait up to 7 days. Even up to 7 days, you can continue. At the end of 7 days, you can continue with you can do one screening and send the child. And again, as far as preterms are concerned, keep on testing them, but you can wait for treating them. You have a high threshold to treat them, but very low threshold to retest them. And again, now so far we have been very comfortable finding out a diagnosis, making out a diagnosis of congenital hypothyroidism. There ended our job. That's what we were thinking. Start the child on thyroxine, we were happy. We never bothered to make an etiological diagnosis in these children. Whether what is the cause for congenital hypothyroidism, we never bothered. But that becomes important now, because there are two entities where we call it as, one is transient, another one is permanent hypothyroidism. Permanent hypothyroidism, all of you know, agenesis is the commonest cause of hypothyroidism, 80% of cases. Rarely it can be ectopic or lingual. And one common entity which most of you don't make is dysharmonogenesis. This is a very common cause of congenital hypothyroidism. The clues for dysharmonogenesis, the siblings will have a goiter. One child will have a goiter, the sibling also will have a goiter, and due to technetium uptake, you can make out the diagnosis. But commonly you don't make a diagnosis of dysharmonogenesis. You think it is agenesis. Okay, these are permanent cause of hypothyroidism. There are certain transient cause of hypothyroidism. For example, mother is a Graves' disease, blocking antibodies may be there, exposure to antithyroid medications in the mother, iron deficiency in the mother, mild enzyme delayed maturation of the enzymes, mild dysharmonogenesis in the preterm, all these can produce transient hypothyroidism. Now, these transient hypothyroidism do not require lifelong therapy, whereas permanent hypothyroidism requires lifelong therapy. And again, knowing the etiology, why is it important? You can modify treatment according to the etiology. For example, in ectopic and dysharmonogenesis, the thyroid tissue is already there, so you always require lesser amounts of thyroid hormones. And again, prediction of intellectual development, agenesis carries a bad prognosis when compared to ectopic and dysharmonogenesis. And uncomplicated, unwanted thyroxine therapy in a child who is having transient hypothyroidism can lead on to complications like craniosynostosis and so many other complications. So we should always avoid, and we should try to make an etiological diagnosis. So, in the newborn, by a thyroid screening, you have made a congenital hypothyroidism. Are you going to make an etiological diagnosis at that point of time itself? Or you are going to start therapy immediately and then wait? If you are going to wait, you will have to wait till 3 years, because we don't want to interfere with the CNS maturation, and the growth of the brain is complete by 2 years. So we wait till 3 years. We don't want to stop therapy. So that decision you will have to make. If you are in a fantastic institution and corporate sector where you have a technetium scan and an ultrasonogram, you try to make an etiological diagnosis at birth itself. Though even in ICH, we don't have a technetium scan, so we cannot make an etiological diagnosis. So if it is not possible for you to make an etiological diagnosis at birth, you start therapy and work up at 3 years. Okay, so this 3 years, you should have it in mind. One more number. Already we had 3 numbers: 20, 10, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and this is 3 years. Now remember, any child with congenital hypothyroidism whose etiological diagnosis has not been established should undergo re-evaluation at 3 years, right? Next. Now, how are you going to evaluate the child, whether it is at 3 years or at birth? 2 investigations, I told you. Ultrasonogram gives you the structure. Thyroid is there or not, it gives you the structure. Whereas function of the thyroid is made out by technetium scan. Whether it is enough to do ultrasonogram, whether it is enough to do technetium, because there are problems with both. Ultrasonogram, it will say there is no thyroid here. Sometimes the thyroid may be there in the lingual region. So it might miss a lingual thyroid, okay? And a technetium scan, though it is an ideal imaging modality, it has one problem. See, and it is very, very easy to see. Don't imagine radioactive iodine and all. The technetium is a very simple investigation to do, and the cost is also not very heavy. It comes to around 1,100 in most of the city centers. It's a very nominal price. You can do a technetium scan, and all you need for a technetium scan, you have to introduce an intracath. That is, put a Venflon, and the isotope is injected intravenously, and you take an image recording. You should take, but one precaution is, child should not be on any thyroid medicine, thyroxine or any medication 2 to 3 weeks prior to scanning. So that's why even when you are going to do at 3 years a technetium scan, you will have to stop thyroxine for 3 weeks, and only then you can do a technetium scan. Okay, so that's why we are telling, before starting thyroxine in the newborn period, try to do a technetium. But if are not available, you have no other option. So, and you can take a imaging. Normal uptake is only 2 to 5, less than 5%. Look at this patient. Here you are able to see that 27% uptake. That number 27 is there. So this increased uptake, always the diagnosis is dysharmonogenesis. And here this lingual thyroid, which is there at the base of the tongue, which you would have never made out in this child, will be missed by an ultrasonogram thyroid. So it is, ideally speaking, better when you do both the investigation. And based on these two, you can come to a diagnosis. Ultrasonogram, no gland. Technetium also no gland. Diagnosis is agenesis. Ultrasonogram shows a large gland, that is, a goiter is there, and sibling also has a goiter, and the technetium shows a high uptake. The diagnosis is lingual. Ultrasonogram, no gland, and technetium shows an ectopic uptake. This is a lingual thyroid. This is the only thing which is the greatest advantage of technetium, but this is very uncommon. That's why if you can't do a technetium, at least do an ultrasonogram and open the mouth widely and see whether there's a lingual thyroid. So that can obviate the need for you to do a technetium in the immediate newborn period. Ultrasonogram shows a normal gland, but if the technetium shows no uptake, it is likely to be due because of antibodies or due to iodine. Okay, this is a very simple format for both these investigations. Now, how are you going to treat? All of us are familiar. Start the tablet between 10 to 15 microgram per kilogram. Largest 10 to 15 microgram. You can always err on the greater dose. 15 microgram also you can book. Mother will ask you, it's not available as a syrup. Don't go for syrups also. How to give the tablet? When do you give the tablet? These are the questions mothers will ask. Crush the tablet and mix with breast milk and give early morning every day till 6 months of age. Then in water after 6 months. Why can't we give in the evening? Can we give it in the evening? Can thyroxine tablet can be given in the evening? Is there a grave mistake that you should give only in the morning? Mother might find it difficult in the morning. Can we give? Anybody? Can we give it in the evening? Morning thaan kudukanuma. You can give in the evening also, but give it at a fixed time. For you to remember one fixed time, whatever, morning or evening, whatever be the time, give it at a fixed time. The 24 hours, we are giving only as a single dose. So give it at a fixed time and do not give iron, calcium and soya preparations with thyroxine. And follow-up of these children, so though we have given so many schedules, practically at least once in 3 months in the first year and once in 6 months in second to third year. and annually after that. That will be the most practical thing for you to do. And whenever the child comes for follow-up, you see to it that the T4 is maintained in the upper half of the normal range and TSH is the normal range. Always plot the height or the length of the child. Bone age is not needed if only if the child is not growing well. Please assess the development. Developmental assessment has to be, head circumference has to be monitored. Microcephaly can be produced because of untreated congenital hypothyroidism. Hearing assessments if needed later. So so you know the values, you know how to investigate, and you know to give thyroxine. So this has to be followed meticulously. If you don't do all these things, you will see all these spotters in life. In future, we are not supposed to see such spotters and short stature in children, where you see the child and you make a diagnosis of hypothyroidism. Okay. Now, can we diagnose hypothyroidism as a pediatrician from the growth? Or when do you suspect child is become older, it is coming to you every time for immunization, for growth monitoring? Can we diagnose? Yes, you can do it. Look at this child. This child has got a weight percentile of around 25th centile. The weight is there. But look at the height. It is less than the 3rd centile. Height is okay, but weight is falling less than 3rd centile. You can always suspect hypothyroidism. And again, sometimes you have a child who is obese, who is on the 97th percentile. And the BMI is also elevated. Look at the BMI, it's more than 27. It is an obese child. For a simple obesity, what do you expect? Simple obesity always have a child who is obese and also is also tall. Whereas in a child with hypothyroidism, child can be obese but can be short. Look at the height centile. So such markings can give you a very good clue. And again, when the growth velocity, look at the child's growth velocity, it is just going up. Child is climbing up nicely. But whereas as far as height is concerned, it is not, it is crossing centiles. The height velocity is less than 25th centile. You can again suspect hypothyroidism. Now, apart from this, in an asymptomatic child who comes to you with no features of hypothyroidism, older child, will you screen them for hypothyroidism? What are the conditions or indications where you have to screen older asymptomatic child for juvenile hypothyroidism? Whenever you get a child with type 1 diabetes mellitus, always screen or do a T4 TSH. Children with celiac disease, always do T4 TSH. Children with Down syndrome, we are automatically doing Turner syndrome and thalassemia. These are the older children for whom you should do the screening. Next, we'll now move on to, more or less, we have finished our neonatal and young child hypothyroidism. Now we'll move on to goiters and children. I'll be concentrating on juvenile autoimmune thyroiditis, or what is popularly called as Hashimoto's thyroiditis, for some time. Is it common, madam? Avlo common na Hashimoto's 15 nimisham pesra common, very, very common. So please concentrate again. Okay, 11-year-old female child has come to you with an asymptomatic swelling. Are you able to see the goiter nicely? Butterfly shaped goiter is seen. What is the clinical diagnosis? 4 common clinical diagnoses. It could be a case of JAT, that I have put it as first. It is more common than physiological goiter, which all cases we used to dump it as physiological goiter, simple goiter, colloid goiter, or what other name, one more name. All this is more common than JAT. JAT is more common than your simple goiter. The third one is Graves is very rare. Dysharmoniogenesis is commoner than Graves. These are the 4 common causes. Rarely you can have an adenomyothyroid or thyroid malignancy. Now, while doing a clinical examination, try to grade the goiter, that is important, and always take the height of the child. And very important is always see the sexual maturity rating in these child. And one small clue is, whenever the goiter is firm, you can think more in terms of Hashimoto's, and soft goiters are likely to be physiologic or dysharmoniogenesis. Look for a cervical lymph node. Examination of the goiter is not complete without examination of the nodes to rule out malignancy. This is clinical examination. SMR is mandatory because children with hypothyroidism can present with various pubertal problems. What are the pubertal problems? They can either have a delayed puberty. Delayed puberty is a female who has not attained puberty by 13.5 years, or a male by 14 years. Or they can have precocious puberty lately. That is not very common. We call it as an overlap syndrome. Because of increased TSH in hypothyroidism, there is a spill, the TSH and FSH resemble. They have the molecular mimicry is there, and they can go for precocious puberty, delayed puberty, arrested puberty. They can present to you with menorrhagia or precocious puberty. All these pubertal problems, when they come to you, make use of that opportunity and do a T4 TSH. Why refer them to first do that? Then you can always refer that to be an obstetrician later, or to an endocrinologist. So whenever an older child comes to you with probably thyroid related problem, you have all these battery of investigations available to you. Or are you going to do all of these investigations at a stretch, which will cost around 5,000 to 6,000 rupees? First to do is, in a case of suspected hypothyroidism, do a free T4 and TSH. Don't ask for total T4, total T3 and all that. Ask for a free T4 and a TSH. This is the basic investigation which you will have to do. And if you are in a child who is having a goiter, you have done a thyroid function test. The next test which you are going to order is an antibody. In a child with goiter, older child, you are going to ask an order for antibodies. And significant titers of thyroid antibodies are enough for the diagnosis of autoimmune thyroiditis. There is no need for ultrasonogram, technetium scan, FNAC, they are not mandatory. And the two antibodies which are available to us, anti-thyroglobulin antibody and thyroid peroxidase or microsomal antibodies. Among these two, always prefer an anti-TPO. This is superior. And even titers less than 100 are less specific. You should have higher titers, more than thousands you are needed to diagnose a case of juvenile autoimmune thyroiditis. And antibodies once present are unlikely to disappear. So there is no pointing in retesting them again and again them in follow-up. Don't retest the antibody again and again, even if there is improvement in the child, okay? And we'll go to one case scenario. This is a 12-year-old child, swelling in the neck is there. No signs of hypothyroidism. It's a soft goiter on palpation. What is your take on this child? Probably it could be a case of colloid goiter, simple goiter, physiological goiter, but I told you, even if you suspect, you are going to do an antibody and thyroid function test. Thyroid function tests are normal in this child, antibodies are negative. FNAC was not done, technetium scan was not. So what is your diagnosis? It's a case of puberty goiter, simple goiter, physiological goiter, colloid goiter. So you can make, this is the diagnosis. And 5 no's in these conditions is, there is no abnormal thyroid function, no abnormal antibody, no abnormal cells, no abnormal scan, no abnormal Hurdle cells or whatever cells you want to say. All no in physiological goiters. Will you treat a physiological goiter? The goiter is there, no hypothyroidism. Are you going to treat or no? No. Not on a routine basis. Just monitor the size and watch for prognosis. We had done one study where we have started giving slow dose thyroxine to decrease the size of the thyroxine. We landed up in a TSH becoming undetectable when we started. So it is not to be, no need to give immediately. Just observe the child and give a follow-up. This is one more child. This child has got a firm goiter on palpation. There is no symptoms of hypothyroidism. Likely to be, it could be a case of Hashimoto's. What are you going to do? Again, you have done a TSH and free T4, which are normal. But the antibodies are in more than 2000 and 1300. So what is the diagnosis now? Child is having juvenile autoimmune thyroiditis, but there is no hypothyroidism. Okay, JAT with euthyroidism. Now, JAT with euthyroidism, at present, there is no need for you to do anything. Though the diagnosis of juvenile autoimmune thyroiditis you have made or Hashimoto's you have made, this child does not have hypothyroidism. It's only having euthyroidism. So you are not going to start on any therapy for this child. But 50% of these children who have euthyroidism at present can become hypothyroid on follow-up. So you'll have to just follow up these children. Okay, they will definitely become hypothyroid. Don't start therapy now. You will wait and follow up and then start therapy. Now this is another child, the same child, if the child has TSH is more than 40 and T4 is less than 0.1. So this child is having hypothyroidism and the antibodies are positive. So for this child, it's juvenile autoimmune thyroiditis with hypothyroidism. Whether to treat or not, we are going to treat the hypothyroidism. We are not going to do anything about the antibodies. You are not going to start them on steroids or anything. You are just going to treat the hypothyroidism. Okay, so there ends the problem for that child. And again in neonatal congenital hypothyroidism, the dose we used was 15 micrograms per kilogram. Whereas for juvenile thyroiditis, the dose we are going to start is 2 to 3 microgram per kilogram per day, and you follow up these children regularly. Now the mother comes and asks you, I have one more daughter, she's fine, but I am worried this girl is having autoimmune thyroiditis. Can that girl also have autoimmune thyroiditis? Catch hold of that opportunity. You can immediately tell her that the risk is around 30% antibody positivity for the sibling and 5% for the disease. Okay, so you have every right to screen the sibling and if needed even the mother also. Okay, there is no harm. So you can check the antibody for the sibling also. And then the mother asks, the child has developed a congenital hypothyroidism, we told due to agenesis is permanent, whereas this is an acquired problem. Can this be permanent? Does this child require lifelong thyroxine therapy? That will be the question. Again, jacked with hypothyroidism, 20% of them, they remit and they can become euthyroid. So you can have a trial of therapy for 6 weeks after the growth and puberty is complete. Again, the secret of your practice and your success is frequent follow-up of these children that is going to help you. Okay. Now, so juvenile autoimmune thyroiditis, we finished. The take-home points in juvenile autoimmune, the free hormones are always superior to thyroid hormones. Thyroid peroxidase antibody is superior to thyroglobulin antibody. And monitor the thyroid functions and do not monitor the thyroid antibodies. Screen the siblings also. Rarely Hashimoto's can be antibody negative. Now, this is another, it's not an uncommon problem. 1.3, there's a goiter, but there's a 1.3 centimeter nodule in the left lobe. What do you want to do this? This is one child which you'll have to refer to our pediatric surgical department, or because you'll have to do a technetium scan. Look for a node. If there is a nodule and there are a node, always refer the child to for a technetium scan, and for your pediatric surgical consult should always be got to rule out a papillary carcinoma thyroid or malignancy in the thyroid. Early surgical referral whenever there is a nodule in the thyroid, either by clinical examination or by technetium scan. This is one condition which we don't see commonly. You are able to see a proptosed eye, a 10-year-old child who had a goiter, prominent eye, sweating and weight loss. The child can have any of these tremors, weight loss, EC fatigability, tachycardia, hypertension, very poor handwriting. All these can be there in these children, and you know that's probably a case with hyperthyroidism. Graves is not uncommon. T3 will be elevated, TSH will be grossly suppressed. You can always do an ultrasonogram thyroid, and technetium will show an increased uptake in Graves. The treatment, as all of you know, is neomercazole and Inrol. Okay. Now, these are some common issues with it. A 2-year-old child has come to you with cleft palate, and routine assessment, you think there is growth failure. Growth failure, I don't mean not only weight. These children can have even a weight loss because of cleft palate, repeated aspiration pneumonia. They don't take feeds adequately. They have but also when there is a faltering in the growth or the lean stature or the height. And we have done, whenever there's a cleft palate, whenever central defects are there, you also should think in terms of central hypothyroidism. So we have done a free T4, which is low, and TSH, which is supposed to be around 6 to 10, is 1.1. So thyroxine is also low, TSH is also low. So cleft palate, central defects, think in terms of central hypothyroidism also. Okay. In a primary hypothyroidism, TSH is high and a T4 is low. Whereas in a central hypothyroidism, TSH can be normal or low, and you also have a low free T4. Okay. But one precaution which all of you should do prior to treating central hypothyroidism. For example, once you find out hypothyroidism, you are in a hurry to immediately start the child on thyroxine. In central hypothyroidism, always MRI is mandatory prior to starting therapy, and always check the serum cortisol prior to starting thyroxine, and start them on hydrocortisone and then thyroxine, right? So take this precaution in central hypothyroidism. This problem all of you are going to face in future. Children who are coming with obesity, somebody would have already done a T4 TSH. In children with obesity, mild borderline elevation of TSH is very, very common. Free T4 will be normal, but mild elevation of TSH is very, very common. 7.5, even up to 9, they can have a mild elevation of TSH. Is very common in children with obesity. We call this as, anybody? Subclinical hypothyroidism. Whether to treat subclinical hypothyroidism is a controversy. You will treat subclinical hypothyroidism when you also have positive antibodies, abnormal ultrasonogram or growth faltering. You have a low threshold to start therapy. In obese children, just by finding a borderline elevation of 7.5 or 6.5 or 8, don't start them on thyroxine therapy. Obese children, you take this precaution. Okay. Now again, I'll go to certain practical tidbits for the next 5 minutes, and I will end up the session. Mothers commonly ask you, my house is very far away. Can I bleed? I have come to the hospital now. Can I give the blood sample now itself, or should I take the sample also on empty stomach? You can give the sample now itself. And again, they will ask, should I skip the medication before giving blood? No need to skip the medication. Child can continue the routine medications and she can give the blood. And whenever you are ordering for hormones, I already told you, order for free hormones are superior to total hormones. Then if the patient, in a case of JAT, if the patient can afford only one antibody, which is preferable, antimicrosomal antibody, which is at a lesser cost, get that antibody done. Even with that one antibody, you can label the child as juvenile autoimmune thyroiditis, provided you have the clinical findings. And again, is bone age assessment, because to do this bone age, patient has to spend another 800 rupees. Is it needed in case of congenital hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's thyroiditis? Not routinely recommended. Only it has an added value in case of short stature and pubertal disorders. Otherwise, no need to routinely do bone age in all cases, and most of it is not needed at all. And how to collect and process a sample for thyroid function test? You can collect it in a plain bulb, and you can maintain the temperature at even at 4 degrees Celsius. It can be kept with you for 4 days. So the sample, it can be done, sampling can be done this method. And again, Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disorder. Should screening for other autoimmune disorders should be done when you make out a diagnosis of JAT? That you must be thinking, no? So what are the other? Not in all cases, but based on clinical symptoms and growth chart and Tanner stage, you can do, for example, it can be associated with pernicious anemia or B12 deficiency. It can be associated with type 1 diabetes mellitus. It can be associated with celiac disease. So you can think about screening, provided they are symptomatic. They have clinical symptoms, or there is a problem in the growth chart or in Tanner stage. Now, this is the last scenario I am putting for you. We had this case last month. A 3-year-old child presented to the ER with ingestion of unknown quantity of thyroxine tablets. The tablets are very small. All of you might have seen the tablets. They are very small. And mother also wouldn't. They usually have that bottle which contains 100 tablets or 50. So unknown, we don't even know the numbers. Unknown quantity of thyroxine tablets. You see the child is well. You have done a stomach wash, you see the child is well. Can we send the child as early as possible? This is the question. Can we send the child is well, no symptomatology at present. You have already taken a hormone levels. You have taken a T4 TSH levels, you have taken, but there is no proven or established toxic dose as far as thyroxine is concerned. Just with the values, you can't tell anything. So what do you do? And again, take a precaution like iron toxicity. Signs of toxicity due to thyroxine can be delayed up to 10 to 14 days. So you will have to monitor these children for the 14 days. And if there are red flag signs like fever, tachycardia, excessive sweating, irritability or heat tolerance, you might start these children on early propranolol and steroids. You can also consider prednisolone in severe cases. Okay, this is not a very uncommon thing, but 2 things. Always look for delayed toxic symptoms and monitor these children for up to 2 weeks. And if needed, start these children on propranolol, but not for a long period, maybe for a short period of 2 weeks. These children usually become well after that, and then you can take them off from your follow-up. Okay, that's all. Thank you for patient listening. I might have been a little rapid, but I tried to convey what all message I wanted to convey. Hope you had a good time. Thank you. Once again, thank our beloved Srinivasan sir for having given me this wonderful opportunity. Thank you, sir.